Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, joined by Jason D'Rocha, Vice President and Growth Coach of Sportball. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Jonathan.
Tell us a little bit about Sportball and what it is that you guys do.
Sure. It's a sports education company for children from the ages of 16 months to 12 years old. We focus on multisport, non-competitive instruction. And our goal really is to build their physical and social skills through sport at a very, very young age. So, starting with kids at 16 months, they're there with their parents. And then as they get to 3 to 4 years old, they're in a drop-off setting where they get a chance to learn, sports skills and development on their own.
As a parent who watched a lot of this early on, organized chaos. You're in the business of organized chaos for kids. What is the impetus? You talked about sports education. Social aspect being a big part of it. How do you start with kids that are so young? From a foundation of sharing, do these kids then learn how to be good playground friends and things of that
Yeah.
nature? I mean, it really forms an early foundation for children to realize that, the world's not just them.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, and hopefully, that's the outcome, right? Like the kids at 2 and 3 years old, we're not expecting them to go out and play sports with their friends on their own independently, but our goal really is to give them the exposure at a really young age that's extremely positive. So at 16 months, 2, 3 years old, they're essentially developing their physical and social literacy. So just generally understanding what it means to throw and catch and step and run and wait for their turn and listen to an instruction, all of those fundamental skills that will serve them well as they start to develop their physical skills, their cognitive ability, and then learning how to play sports. But the general goal for us is build their confidence so that they can be more competent as they get older. And really, that just what it boils down to is how many positive associations do children have with sports as well as their mentors.
Where does it fit? We often hear about kids being so overscheduled these days, and
Mhm.
and not a free moment. Where are your programs fit within, the academic? Obviously, for very young children who may be in daycare, it's a little bit easier, or perhaps if they have a half day. But where
Yeah,
does it fit within, often overscheduled kids who are,
sure.
perhaps playing sports at a, middle, early elementary school to middle school age?
Yeah.
How does that fit in with their other activities? When does it happen? Is it evenings, weekends, afternoons?
Yeah, really, really, because we start with kids as young as 16 months, we can run programs 7 days a week. And so we integrate into schools and childcares and daycares, and we sometimes become the enrichment program, whether it's after school or intercurricular. We also partner with community centers and sometimes and city centers. We sometimes rent our own locations, and we would run programs on early Saturday and Sunday mornings because if you are a parent of young children, kids wake up early and they have a ton of energy. So, we'll run parent participation classes on early Saturday and Sunday mornings where, there might be 10 or 15, sometimes 18 parents that show up with their 2 and 3 year old and they'll learn a different sport every week, but it's done in a really fun and creative way. And then as the day progresses, we usually start offering programs to children at a little bit of an older age. Our after school programs are geared for school age children for the most part. And then as kids, progress throughout their journey at sport ball, they usually register season after season. We'll move from a multi-sport approach, which is non-competitive skill instruction, to more of a semi-competitive, where we actually start to teach children the concept of competition and winning and losing and pro-social language and success and failures. Because all of that is innately built into sport, but we see it as a skills progression so that when children come to sport ball, they can start at 2 and they can stay with us all the way to 12 years old.
Well, it's interesting because it's innately built into sport, yet it's usually not called out, or at least as an educational tool.
Yeah.
You may have that private moment with a coach where they give you feedback, and it's a learning moment, but is it really called out as such? And it very often isn't. And I would imagine that
So
kids
true.
have the ability to learn, right from wrong in their interactions from a fairly young age.
Yeah.
It probably is an interesting dynamic to have a coach do it as opposed to a parent telling them right from
Yeah.
wrong, and
Jonathan, that's
making it
such a
fun
great
along
point.
the way, I presume.
That's 100% correct. Like we have this saying where, children are having so much fun at sport ball, they don't even realize that learning is taking place. But you brought up such a great point. It's this concept of coaching with purpose. So at sport ball, every skill, game, activity, and instruction has a purpose. So all of our coaches are trained to connect with children first, learn their names, build a relationship, gain their trust, and then progress them at a rate that they're comfortable with. But the job really isn't just to make sure that children are learning, but we also want to make sure that if there's a caregiver in the room, whether it's a parent or a grandmother or grandfather, or even a teacher or an educator, how to properly assist the child, not even just, physically supporting that child when they're, practicing a sport or a skill, but just how to coach them effectively, how to use pro-social language and positive direction. Something as simple as, don't raise your stick. Our coaches are trained to say, boys and girls, let's keep our blades on the ground, telling them what we want them to do as opposed to what we don't want them to do. Those are the things that would distinguish a sport ball experience from any other.
I can tell you must be a Canadian-based company. You went right to hockey as the example.
That's right. That's right. Regardless of
So,
the Leafs breaking our hearts all the time. Yeah, I'm always hockey first.
what is the range of sports that you do offer? And is there plans to expand, or have you expanded over time? And
Yeah,
obviously,
good question.
sports go through cycles in terms of popularity with kids and what they see on television. Or now we're in a era of or time frame for Winter Olympics. I think I'm sure every kid wants to be a winter athlete now. So how do you define the sports that you're going to be involved in?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really great question. So for us, it's eight major ball sports in North America that everyone is already familiar with. But as we continue to grow, for example, in India, they may not necessarily teach American football there, so we've included cricket and rugby. Same thing in Singapore, where they don't necessarily teach ice hockey, so they'll do field hockey there. Um, we make sure that we are focused on sports skill development, but the actual sport itself is a conduit to teach you physical and social development, right? So it doesn't really matter the sport. When you have a sport ball class, children are developing the physical literacy and learning social skills.
But really adapting to the culture of the particular country that you're operating in and being able to offer something that kids can identify with. And, like most kids, they have their heroes, right? The sports
Yep,
athletes become their heroes.
that's exactly
So,
right.
really, really fascinating concept. Where are you now providing the services? Where is it truly global in nature? Nature?
Yeah, so we are franchised right across Canada. We have an interesting opportunity in the US. So, we're in Texas, we're in New York, we're in Arizona, in California. But one of the things that we've realized is the multisport concept, which started 30 years ago here in Canada, is very new in the US to a degree, in the way that we do it. It's starting children as young as 16 months, 2 to 3 years old, is something that's pretty novel. So for us, we see the US as a massive opportunity for sport ball programs. We have to find the right operator, of course. Our potential franchisee would be someone that's passionate about sports, passionate about physical activity, loves people, loves working with kids, loves working with, program partners and making a difference in the community. And being in this business for 30 years, we have the ability to pick our partners. So we're not in the business of selling franchise opportunities. We're trying to award folks who are trying to make a positive impact in their community, and people who want to blend passion and purpose. I think that after the pandemic, a lot of folks realized, how I choose to spend my time matters. And if I'm going to do something, I might as well have fun doing it because it could be taken away just like that. And so our goal really is to find those, we call them talented but imperfect. So not everyone's an entrepreneur, not everyone's a business owner, but we've been doing this for 30 years. We've developed the playbooks. We know what the secret sauce is to build a fantastic business in any given community. You just need the right folks with charisma and passion and are a joy to work with.
And it really sounds like a fascinating opportunity for the right people, the right fit in terms of creating something that perhaps doesn't exist. I really feel like you guys fill a niche between what's offered in school programs and what may be offered in community programs. And we all know where those are going, unfortunately, with budgets tightening across the board, that those opportunities are perhaps shrinking. And
Yeah.
what you have on the other end of the spectrum has mushroomed over the last several decades is highly specialized sports, very competitive travel programs, things of that nature, which we recognize, and I said earlier, is probably fits 1% of the population, not the
Right.
99%.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And our goal really is to be complementary. Like, our goal really isn't to take away from those competitive programs. Like I said, competition is innately built into sport, but sport ball could be essentially a feeder system where you bring families in at the very youngest age with their children. You teach them the fundamentals of those sports. You build their confidence and competence so that when they want to go and practice in community-based programs and more competitive programs like house leagues and rep and more competitive than that, then at least you know you're getting kids that have some really positive associations with sports at a young age. They have some fundamental movement skills. They've developed their physical literacy. They've heard those sports. They've played those sports. They've touched that equipment. They're going to be that much more competent when they get out there on the field. And even more so, parents will also know what they're looking for. You know, parents sometimes will put their child in an experience where there's a coach who maybe understands the sport very well, but doesn't connect very well to their child. So if you can establish what that looks like, what great looks like at a young age for your child, then you won't be confused as the kids get older. You'll know where your child's supposed to be because you've already had them in the right spot to begin with.
It sounds like it serves to build a fantastic foundation. So wish you continued success with it. Jason D'Rocha, if people want to learn more about sport ball or potential for franchise opportunities, what's the best way for them
Yeah.
to reach out to you?
So, I mean, to reach out to me personally, probably LinkedIn is the best place to find anyone these days. It's Jason D'Rocha. My last name is spelled D apostrophe ROCHA. And if they're interested in a franchise opportunity with Sportball and really building human connections in the space of AI, I think that this is probably the next wave for lots of entrepreneurs. Go to sportballfranchise.com and you can find all the information that you want about our company. And you can also book a meeting with me there as well.
Fantastic. Jason D'Rocha, Vice President and Growth Coach of Sportball. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Take care of yourself.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.